for actual reports, and I'm sorry, 17 for actual reports, incident reports, and out of those 20, the other remaining were miscellaneous reports that the officers responded to. Any more questions from the council?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, finance, municipal, personnel check. Finance. Who's on the finance committee? Oh, Dessa was on it, then.
We are, I
Oh, we got the books.
You got the books.
I have to print out the computer print thing, but that's the balances in there. I called the bank and made sure that what in the last total is what it is. If you want to print out on the computer, we'll get it printed out for the next meeting.
So by Monday, we'll have a printout of each account and the activity?
Yes.
Melissa?
did you ask me?
I think that's what I gave all of them.
That's what you did.
Pardon?
That's what
That
I
was
gave
finance.
about.
Is anything going on City Hall? I guess that was part of the
No.
municipal report. Okay.
As far as what? There's always something going on.
Always something, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's going to be discussed during the executive session. Okay. Ms. Harrell?
You skipped Chip.
Oh, Chip. I'm sorry, Ms. Harrell.
1 second.
All right. I would just like to say Chip is moving right along. We finished the house today. And they have done the go down and all for that, so we finished that. And we're getting ready to do 3 houses at one time. Hopefully, we should be on the move with that by the middle of next month. So we send the papers off. And we'll be doing 3 at one time. So we're just proud of our Chip program. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, everybody's got an audit, I believe. This was a most unusual year. I've been doing this for y'all for a number of years, and we've come through some rough places. And this year was difficult a lot because there was no one in City Hall that was there during 2013, so we all were kind of on a hunting expedition. We were unable to find a lot of things, but in order to present the audit, your staff managed to call and get what we needed, so we did not have a scope limitation. We were able to find everything we needed. I appreciate everybody's help in making the audit, in allowing us to complete the work for the audit. The financials themselves, it's not one of your best years. The net position for the overall, which includes the governmental funds as well as the proprietary funds, we had a net loss of $36,405. Our unrestricted fund balance decreased by $68,766. The general funds fund balance, if you look at all the governmental funds together, they increased, but the increase was mostly due to the SPLOST funds that were still sitting in the account. The general fund revenue decreased by $81,000. The net change in the fund balance for the general fund decreased by $9,625. The water sewer revenue fund had a decrease of $11,001, but the operating expenses increased by $167,656. So I think this was one of the highest changes. The operating expenses in the water sewer fund increased by 76%. And I was talking to Levon about it earlier, and he said there were a lot of expenses with the water tank, if I got it right, or the water system. So a lot of that additional expenses could be from just repairs and maintenance. But I think that really did you as much harm as anything during the year. In the front of your folders, we have 2 letters that we are required to give you. And one of those letters is called "To Those Charged with Governance." Basically, it's just summing up things like what kind of estimates do we make, did we have any problems, did we encounter any difficulties with the staff, were there disagreements with management, all this kind of thing. Basically, it is just something that you're required to get. The only thing that concerned me about last year that was in this report was that there seemed to be a lot of transactions that didn't have any authority from your board. And that worries me. The second letter is called the management letter, and we have 3 findings. The first finding, which is a material weakness, is the absence of segregation of duties in the custody and recording of assets. We've discussed that every year. It's something you will always have because you're a small city government and we don't have enough employees to totally segregate the duties. And one of the things that I always recommend is that we put in additional checks and balances to help offset that lack of segregation of duties. Before your city manager left, she had asked me about this, and we had talked about it, and I had given her a worksheet that showed the different functions that should be segregated. Now, we will not be able to get there because we don't have enough people, but we talked about some additional checks and balances where people check behind each other and things in order to compensate for that. A lot of that, in order to compensate for that, has to come from y'all. It has to come from your finance committee who looks at the bank statements, and it just requires more commitment and all, and it requires a lot more than what you're actually paid to do. I can honestly say that because when you don't have the segregation of duties, the only thing we can do to compensate for that is for everybody to, for your finance committee and all, to be checking behind what's going on in City Hall. And I think we lost a lot of that last year. There were 2 departments that the expenditures exceeded the budget in the general fund. And then in the SPLOST fund, there was a check written out of SPLOST that should have been one of the other funds. So the general fund needs to reimburse the SPLOST 2 funds for $5,000. And the SPLOST 3 fund needs to be reimbursed for $100. And that's something that we need to do pretty soon. In our letter of corrective action plan that goes to the state auditor's department, we put in there that that would be tended to pretty soon. Under the other matters portion of your letter, I've made some suggestions. Some of it is just talking about things that we've done. Some of it is accounting functions that I would like to see some changes made. I can't make management decisions for you, but I can recommend some things that need to be done so that when we come into audit, we have what we need to audit with. Because in order for me to give you a clean bill of health, I have to have certain documentation. And it shouldn't be where we have to do like we did this year, where the girls had to call and get copies and everything, so that before we could even finish the audit. But none of this stuff can't be fixed, you know, and everybody seems to be trying to work these problems out, so I think, you know, they can be. The audit itself, if you would take the time to read the notes section, the notes sections usually start on around page 21 or 22, somewhere in there. That is a good synopsis of what's going on with the city. It explains the types of accounting, starts on page 21. It talks about the capital outlay, the fixed assets of the city. It talks about the debt, what debt the city has. It shows you the breakdown of what is due each consecutive year on your debt. So when you're working on your budget, it's a good place to look to find out, okay, how much money are we going to have next year to fund our debt. So there's a lot of things in that notes section that will help you when you get ready to work on your budget. Like I said, I appreciate the help and the cooperation that I had from the girls in the office. Hopefully next year will go a little bit smoother. That's what we will hope for. Has anybody got any specific questions for me?
You said that you would audit through June. Think that we're changing staff?
We can, I have a pretty full schedule. I can try to work you in if you want to do an additional audit, but we would need to come up with an engagement letter and a fee, agree upon a fee to do a mid-year audit.
Is that report going to be available to the citizens at City Hall?
Yes, sir. It will be on the internet under the Carl Vinson Institute.
How many pages is it? I can't remember how many you usually.
This one is 59.
Yes, okay.
But it takes it a little while to get on there. We will send this report into the State Auditor's Department tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then they review it, and once they give it the okay, then it'll be on a website for public knowledge, for any of you to look at.
Yeah, we need to find out grants and how that is.
Right, well, it will be mailed tomorrow.
This is just a question. I know you get paid for what you do, but is there a checklist that auditors provide to the council to help them next year? In other words, do you all have any monster? I'm retired military. Normally, they give you a checklist to make it better for them next year, or the mid, whatever it is.
I have an audit checklist. It's about 94 pages long. But it is more from what I have to do from an audit standpoint. I don't know that there is a list as such that the main thing is accountability. I mean, you know, that and a paper trail. Accountants love paper trails. I mean, I want to be able to see. One of my suggestions in here is, for instance, if you receive a check from the state of Georgia for a various grant, that check stub that comes with it is very important to us because it tells us which grant it is and what the number of the grant is. So a lot of times for compliance issues, I have to go look up that grant number to see what the compliance issues are for that grant. So it's just a matter of just give me a paper trail. You know, for every deposit, I need to know where that money came from. And if there was a check stub with that check, I need that attached to the daily deposit so that I have a paper trail to work with.
Okay, so following up on my question, so really the state, as far as you know, there's no requirement, because to me, I go to a lot of cities and I do this, just listen to what's going on, and to me it would be easier for the mayor and city council, and this may be a monster, but for the state to give these people somewhat of a checklist to follow in terms of, here's what you need to do in order to have this thing running in a manner that when you come in and do your audit, it will look more professional. The citizens, it just make good sense to me.
Well, like I said, I don't know of a checklist for the city council.
Okay.
Y'all, I mean, I don't know if when y'all have been to your GMA conventions and all, if they've given you anything like that, I don't know.
Okay.
But, I mean, I'll be glad to share my 94-page checklist that I have for my audits. It's pretty detailed, though. It's, you know, about the basis of accounting and all, but, I mean, it's public knowledge. You're welcome to it. Anybody else?
One more question. Do you still require or ask citizens of city governments to have 2 people sign checks?
Yes, that is in this management letter. That is one thing that
What do
I
you
always
think-
recommend.
What do you think it'd be a conflict of interest for a councilman to sign a check as her husband is employed with the city and also the chief of police or relative or?
Well, they were they were elected in this official capacity. As long as, I am satisfied as long as 2 people sign that check. You know, as long as you've got 2 people looking at it. Now, you've also got a finance committee who is supposed to be overlooking anything. And I always recommend that someone from the finance committee open that bank statement every month and look at those checks, because they have all been looking at the invoices every month, supposedly. So when they open that checkbook, that bank statement, and you go through the checks and you look, you're going to be able to see if there's something going on that you, as a council, were unaware of. And that's when you nip something in the bud, is by looking at this on a month-to-month basis and seeing if there's anything. But that would not be something I could answer. But yes, I always recommend two people signing a check. And I recommend that the invoice is attached to those checks so that they can see exactly what they are paying for.
Well, I can say that's why I was arrested, because I asked to look at the bank statement. I was arrested for that. And with that being said, Bill G.B.R, that comes to evaluate our water system, that was a good question, Mr. Rhymes, because he has left, and this is what I'm telling the council, we are not in compliance with the water department. He left this right here, and we probably overlooked it. I overlooked it. But he has a copy, a go-by of all the stuff that the superintendent of the water department is supposed to be doing. And on this, it says, it has yes, no answers. You say yes, you say no, as to how much you're in compliance. And we are not in compliance. And I'm glad he asked that question.
Well, that, as far as your individual departments and whether they're in compliance, doesn't really affect my numbers.
Right.
But
it'll help you.
yes, if you're not in compliance, you need to try to get into compliance.
Exactly, that's my
for
point.
sure. Any other questions for me? If not, I appreciate it, and if you decide you would like an audit done, we can work up some sort of estimate, get an engagement letter, and let you know when I might do it. Okay? Well, thank y'all.
Thank you.